Hello and welcome to the Championship Mindset Podcast. I'm joined today by a longtime friend, mentor, and local community leader, Mr. Sam Sutton. Sam's a dedicated and experienced basketball coach with over 20 years of coaching and specialized training experience. Graduated from Towson University in 2005 with a bachelor's in communication studies. As a player, Sam excelled both at the high school level and collegiate levels, one time earning York County Player of the Year as a senior and eventually going on to play Division I basketball. Throughout his four-year college career, he served as a four-year starter and scored over 1,300 points. Sam offers a range of services now today, including private, group, and team training, clinics, camps, film review, study, and even a parent and player consultation. Sam is committed to the development of the players entrusted to his program and currently operates predominantly out of central Pennsylvania, with his home gym being located at Viney Grimes in York, PA. Mr. Sam Sutton, welcome to the podcast today.
Thanks for having me, EB.
Absolutely, man. It's interesting. A lot of times when I read these introductions and bios that we put together for people, I'm just meeting them maybe for the first time. And so I don't, I read this stuff and it doesn't like resonate with me. Like I can testify to like 8 or 10 of these things in here. I didn't get a chance to watch you as a player, but I've had the blessing of being able to watch you work with a lot of young players, especially locally here over the years, and have seen the impact that you've had. And the word that stuck out to me there was development, which is pretty cool to think about. That's what I would think of when I think of you as development. I'm not sure why that thing just jumped off the page, but tell us a little bit about yourself. I gave like the highlights there, but talk a little bit about your journey with basketball and coaching, as far back as you care to remember.
First of all, very excited to be here at the Championship Mindset. Thank you for the invite. Like you said, you read off some of the big points of my life in this game of basketball and my love affair with basketball, my long relationship. But it started off early, I believe. I remember as a young child, I have two uncles who I was pretty much born into a fraternity of basketball players between my uncles and my fathers. My uncles were both playground legends in New York, high school legends. They both went on to play community college, never really finishing up their careers, but they did make it to community college, and they left a real lasting effect on my life, some big footsteps and big shoes for me to fill growing up. So moving through, I'm originally from Newburgh, New York. And moving through New York, I was always like well known because of this fraternity of uncles that I had. They were called the Go-Backs, which is the high school mascot. And these guys had all the pride in the world when it came to that. So basketball was introduced to me very early. I didn't take to it. Where I grew up, we didn't have a lot of basketball. So we would play in the playgrounds constantly, and find our way through the game through there. We grew up playing football. So I was a football player growing up, really good defensive end and a fullback, mainly because I was slow as I don't know what. My nickname was Turtle, but I took a lot of pride in my blocking, and I was a really great defensive end who was winning Defensive Player of the Year. So that was cool. So I grew up through the game of football. I played basketball a lot because it was in my DNA. I watched my uncles, and I had reference point. My one uncle, his name is James. I had a reference point of watching him fly through the air. And when he showed up to the park, the whole city came out to watch him play. And there were alley-oops. He's flying through the air. They said he couldn't go left, but nobody can ever stop him from going right. And so it was really cool to have this reference point of what was possible and what I can do. I also had a reference point of their failures or their shortcomings, that they didn't make it to fulfill their dreams, did not graduate, college and things of that nature. So immediately those became my initial goals of life. That right out the gate, I'm gonna graduate college. I'm going to college, and I'm gonna make my grandmother proud. That was always my thing growing up. So uh, that gets us to transitioning to about the puberty ages, where I grew up in a pretty rough city. Newburgh, New York is a very rough place where a lot of people don't make it out of. Not many have found a lot of success in my demographic. And so there was a decision made that it was a great time for me to move with my father, who had just relocated from Spring Valley, New York to York, Pennsylvania. This is 1994. And so when I got to York, Pennsylvania, I used to visit there from time to time because we had some family here. And I really didn't know much about it. But when I got here,
And you're what age now in 1994?
I am 3 days before my 14th birthday. Three
So that
days
makes
I never forget. I was kicking and
freshman.
screaming, going into my freshman year. Yep,
Okay.
going into my freshman year. Uh, and the thing that was weird about it for me is during this time in New York, seventh, eighth, and ninth grade was middle school. Coming to York, now I'm going to high school. I thought I had another year to cruise and be
Dominate.
cool, you know, you
Be the
know.
big boy on campus for another year. Yeah.
Yeah. And quite frankly, in our neighborhood as a seventh grader, and I was a very young kid from my class. I was very young for my grade. Um, I took a lot of licks growing up. Everybody in my neighborhood were all of the guys were all 4 or 5 years older than me. So I took a ton of licks. My mother was very protective, so it was all within reason. So ninth grade year, now I get to be the man. I get to be, like you said, big man on campus, and I get shipped off to York. So that was like almost traumatic for me until I started to realize what York had to offer. I get to York, and the first thing I notice is, wow, there is a basketball court on every corner. Like in where we live at, there's one downtown, there's one uptown. Some people who live uptown can't go to the one downtown. A lot of people who live downtown can't go to the one uptown. I was blessed to be able to move through both of them. However, the access and convenience of living right there in the Jackson Towers. My dad was starting life over, so he had an efficiency there at Jackson Towers, there off of George Street and Jackson Street. I would walk down to Jackson Street Park right there, and I found my way. I started to find my way and kind of lost myself in basketball, where I was.
Where's Jackson Park? Is it still there?
Jackson Park is no longer there. It's a parking lot for that old school. I think there's a daycare there.
Okay. All right.
Are you with me now?
I think so. I know where George and Jackson is. I make a right to.
I'm sorry. Wait, is that Jackson? Wait, no. George and Jackson is down here by me. George and Jefferson. Excuse me.
Oh, okay.
George and Jefferson Parkway.
Yeah. I know where it is. Jefferson Elementary's back here behind the aquatic center and stuff. Like,
Nope. Come back to George. Family Central Restaurant, the Central Family Restaurant.
Okay.
There.
Oh, yeah.
That building that sits directly across from them is
Okay.
with the laundromat underneath. My dad was starting life all over again. He literally was pressing reset on life, so we had an efficiency there. And it was he and I there, and so I came and I kind of started all over with him, and he worked second shift. So I had the ability to sit at the park all day long. And so I would sit out to Jefferson Park to pretty much, it was time for him to come home. Then I would hurry up and run home and act like I was in the house on time. This is the era before cell phones, and I don't think we had a house phone at this point in time. So I kind of found myself in basketball at that point in time and just losing myself and that. I didn't know many people, didn't have a lot of friends. So it was real easy for me to kind of just dive into something. I played freshman my freshman year. A lot of people are always usually surprised to hear that. Wasn't the best player on the team. Pretty funny part was back then you had two people who made the newspaper for the top scorers in the freshman games. They would put the score and the two names in there. And I had two guys on my team that they were going to make that paper. They were, and no matter what, they were going to make that paper. So you're not getting the ball.
Yeah.
It was a gift and a curse. I found an innate nature to take my defensive end abilities of rolling, swimming, and doing all those moves to start to rebound. So I found out how to become an extremely elite offensive rebounder. Um, so that was cool.
Anybody point that out to you? That's an interesting way for a 14-year-old up and coming player to contribute to the game. Um, what inspired you to become an elite offensive rebounder?
It was physical. It was
You still
physical.
playing football at this point? No,
I'm,
yes.
I'm transitioning my football skills. I am still. I didn't play football because I just got there in September.
Okay.
So I got there too late to play football.
So were you playing a little defensive end on the
So
basketball
I'm
court?
playing defensive end on there. I'm rolling. I'm spinning off of guys to get to the quarterback. And I
Yeah,
mean,
yeah. Okay.
it's
All right.
all. I took those skills immediately and translated them because I couldn't get the ball. But it was physical. It was something that you can just win off of competing. Rebounds comes down to heart and effort in most
Yeah.
cases, and if you have any knowledge to it. So then I got really good at that. Kind of cool now. So that season ends, and I'm at the parks now. Now, if you want to find me, most times you can find me at the basketball courts. Some basketball court, whether it's Penn Park, Jefferson Park, Vance Park. I'm all over the place to hoop. And during this stage, I get noticed by a senior, a soon-to-be senior named Steve Mayo. Rest in peace. He's no longer with us. He passed last year. Steve Mayo noticed me and he befriended me. And he starts to tell another big rest in peace who just passed this week, Coach Preston, who was a big part of this story. He tells Coach Preston, hey, there's this young guy who's here. Now, he's going to be good. And Steve Boomer was the best hype man I've ever had in my life and have ever seen. Like, he can exaggerate and overtell any story you give him. And he's telling him, like, he's gonna be something. He's gonna be something. And the cool part for me was during this time, I didn't even have that vision. I'm just, I just got done being the kid who can't make the newspaper for freshman basketball. And like, I didn't have that level of confidence of that, but I knew I had a driven nature and a determination to be good. So at this point in time, I'm starting to dunk into my freshman year. I learned from sitting out of Jefferson Park, throwing it up off the lob. I get it dunk, boom. I'm like, oh, shoot. I stayed out there until my hands bled, literally, until I had blisters in my hands bled once I learned how to dunk. So now that's what caught Steve's attention. Coach Preston pulls me into that summer team. They have a summer league team. Now, the unique thing about this team is this team was loaded with at least, at the end of the year, we had 11 seniors, I believe, on this team. 1995 York High Bearcats, 11 seniors. He pulls me into summer league. I am well gifted as a role player. I know how to defend. I know how to take charges. I know how to rebound the heck out of the ball. And my arms are hanging down past my knees at this point, and I can jump. So I can block shots. So on this
Still
team,
slow.
it's starting to work out now. The
Okay.
skill
All right.
powers are
Okay.
starting to hit now.
The name Turtle didn't travel from Newburgh to York, or no?
The name Turtle was so prominent was because my feet grew with my age.
Yeah.
That was another thing that needs to be noted. When I was 9, I wore 9s. When I was 10, I wore 10s. When I was 11, all the way up to 14.
Wow. Okay.
When I was 14, I was wearing a size 14. So literally, my feet were bigger than my body. There's a couple of really hilarious pictures of me when I'm younger. Like with the first pair of Jordans, it looks ridiculous. But so Coach Preston throws me on the summer league team, and things go well. He loves me immediately, and he just starts to pour into me this confidence that I'm good. And the fact that I'm with these seniors, and I literally jumped over a whole class of kids. I jumped over a whole two class of kids, and I'm a sophomore about to play varsity when it was unheard of to do that during this time. Um, was a big deal. And from there, the story kind of took off. It kind of took off. Uh, I was very much not good, just a great role player. We won districts in '95, and I was just a role player on that team. I was a nobody. Junior year, Coach Preston retires. That was his last year when we won districts, and then I was a little stressed with York, so I went back to New York at that point in time.
Mid school year, summer.
Right after my birthday, maybe so like September, right as school started, junior year. School
When you
started.
say stressed with York, what do you mean?
Just I was alone. I was alone. Didn't have a lot of friends. I just came back from the summer. The summer I would go back home, and
Okay.
and honestly, my father was way more of a disciplinarian than my mother was. So it was a lot harder here in New York, Pennsylvania. It was a lot harder.
Yeah.
He's making me do all kind of things. He actually worked at the juvenile detention center. So it was he was going from there to dealing with me, and so it was kind of unique in how things were, and so I grew frustrated with it, and I thought that the things that were in New York that were happening were way more comfortable for me, and I want to experience what's up there. Like, I grew up with my friends my whole life, and now I'm about to miss out on all these things. I don't get to play. I don't get to be a goal back. That drove me crazy.
Yeah.
I was born a goal back, and now I don't get to be a goal back. So during that little period of time, I went up there, and I was able to be a goal back my junior year. So I play about 8 to 10 games up there. Report cards come out, and I got all Fs, literally. We had it was an open campus, so you can have an 8 o'clock class and then have an 11 o'clock class and then have a 2 o'clock class, like leave. There was no discipline in my life at that level for me to handle that. Once we left and we went to the park and got a sub, that was the end of the day. And so we weren't going back to class a lot of times. So at that point, my grandmother looked at me, she's like, "You got to go back. You were doing great. You got to go." And I agree with her. During this time, a new coach came in, Vince Alexander, another great person in my story when we talk about leadership. Vince Alexander comes in. He comes from Oklahoma City, and he has a reference point of recruiting. He has a son who is a senior, about to be a senior, 6'5" guard who came with him, who had just got done competing against another kid who went to Oklahoma State. So he has a vision on what it takes, working out, and recruiting, that kids can go Division I. During this time in the York area, that wasn't a conversation a lot of people were having, that we really have the blueprint to make happen. Even if there was talk of it, there really wasn't a blueprint, a diagram of how we take these steps in order to be a Division I basketball player. Coach Alexander had it, and that's how he talked me to coming back to York. So I come back to York. I had to sit out a good number of games still because it took long for my paperwork and stuff to get through. I think I pretty much I may have played 8 games that season in York. Again, I'm still humble as far as the scoring and offensive side. For example, I think that championship game, I had 21 rebounds and only shot the ball twice, one of them being a putback. And that county championship game that we actually lost to Dallastown.
90. This is 96 now
96. This is 96. 96.
with a new coach.
New coach with a vision, with a coach with a vision and understanding of he understood the landscape of recruiting in
And
college basketball.
but you said and you had 11 seniors in '95.
95, yes, sir.
So you're, I mean, obviously those 11 kids aren't on the team in '96.
Absolutely, absolutely not. Absolutely not. Now, this year, what happened uniquely was his style of coaching and his completely and totally different view on how things should go clash with that junior class, that 96, that class of 96. It completely just bumped heads because they weren't accustomed to everything that he was requiring during that time.
Like
And
what? What were the top two to say four fundamental differences in his requirements or coaching style or approach?
the training, he was on you. We went from Coach Preston was an extremely charismatic guy who knew the game of basketball, excellent basketball coach. Um, coach Alexander was a developer and could see your potential and wanted to heighten your skills. He studied Rick Pitino, so he had all these understandings of presses and different things. And it was just, and he also spiritually started to encourage kids to strengthen their spiritual lives as well. He also was he opened his home to us. We were, he wanted us to come and see him as a father, see him as a husband, and see him in different lights and during that time. And that had a great effect on people. It was completely different. Coach Preston was an awesome man. He was an English teacher, great guy, great coach. But there was a stark difference between the vision of individual success and team success versus team success and pouring into young lives. Um, Coach Preston really poured into a lot of young lives constantly. He was a great coach on the basketball side. The Coach Alexander really wanted to individually push you to college. College was his goal. That was it. College was the goal for all of us, and he was extremely successful. Almost as I know you've had Coach Stoner here. That's as what he does right now, and the movement that he has is what that 2-year window looked like when Coach Alexander here. I want to say maybe 11 to 12 of us from basketball players went on to play college basketball, including me, who was the first Division I player and over almost 40 years at that point in time, and still maybe the last one to walk out of York High with a Division I scholarship since.
Wow.
Yeah, nothing I'm proud of. The latter part, I'm not proud of that at all. But you had Coach Alexander. So then senior year comes, and my superpowers are in full effect now. um, I, you know,
So you mentioned training, like Vince
yes.
Alexander, and the training. What's your training kind of look like? Because I'm assuming, and I could be wrong, that between this junior and senior year, there's a lot of development that takes place with a skill set where you're at some point you're moving from this role player, rebounder, defender, and then we're bolting on an offensive skill set to that, right? That turns
Yeah.
into what you look like the senior year. So talk a little bit about like the development or training that happens between that 96 and 97 year.
First thing I can think about is at the end of every practice, he would call me over there and he constantly challenged me to be out of my comfort zone. He constantly just pushed me. And he would set one ball on one block, another ball on the other block, and get another player there himself. And he would make me drop step and dunk 20 times to walk out of that gym. So literally one step, dunk left hand, one step, dunk right hand, one step, dunk left hand. And I would just do that. He could shoot the ball too. So he would constantly challenge us to be better shooters. And so he was giving us drills to do all that stuff. And the consistent and constant part was just challenging us to be better. Individually, skillfully be better. He had reference points of what Division I players look like. And he wanted us to hit those marks. And for me, a Division I player, like with my abilities, dunked everything and dunked on everybody all the time. So that led to 35 dunks my senior year. I became a master, a master lob catcher. And these weren't breakaway dunks. There's a lot of guys who I bump into who introduced me to their kids as the guy who dunked on them.
Yeah.
So the development it started there. I started to understand, get better at basketball. You take another step. I enter St. Francis, Pennsylvania, Division I school located in extreme rural Loretto, Pennsylvania. I walk on campus as a 17-year-old, which is unheard of at this point in time. I walk on campus as a 17-year-old, and another great mentor of mine, Coach John Sano, who is now current assistant coach at Pittsburgh Johnstown and was a longtime head coach at University of Bloomsburg, was extremely gifted in the area of training and developing. So I walk on campus as a 4-5-3. Let's say that. I walk on in that order, a 4-5-3 in that order and they needed me to be a 2-3 at this point in time. We had multiple guys over 6'9". We had the leading rebounder in the nation who was 6'8". 6'8", 270 and bench press 400 pounds. So there was no room in there for me to be there. So immediately he gives me these ball handling drills that I'm doing daily. And he was really good at form shooting. He had it all down. And Sam, this is boom, boom, boom. Mind you, I was found at the Pennsylvania Maryland All-Star game. I was recruited a good bit, but I was still pretty quiet on the recruiting scene. I signed July sometime. June or July. It was very last minute. I took a lot of my visits. Central Pennsylvania wasn't getting recruited. That wasn't happening during that time. So we immediately got to work, and I was, had a very successful collegiate career after that. But every year I got better, mainly because Coach Alexander was a big piece, and then Coach Sano, who taught me how to grind, And then another big influence was my teammates. I had guys who worked constantly, who were putting up thousands of shots, who were swimming, who were lifting, trying to get to the 300 club and bench pressing and things of that nature. So there was a standard for excellence that I was introduced that my competitive nature couldn't lie down with. I couldn't just sit back and watch other guys growing themselves and not do it for myself. So every year in college, I felt like I got better, and that has kind of led me to where I am today, to be able to give those same traits and same skills and same understandings and leadership to a lot of the young men and women that I have an opportunity to deal with.
Yeah, it's an amazing story to hear, from literally modeling the playground legends of the uncles that you looked up to, and then finding your own niche of offensive rebounding that got you attention, and then realizing that you needed to develop this other skill. And it sounds like the timing of this other coach coming along. There's a lot of similarities that it sounds like what I watch you now with development and skill work and stuff. You talk about pushing people outside of their comfort zone. One of the things I see with you constantly, regardless of who you're working with, is you're always getting them to break stuff. Do it faster, do it wrong, right? Until it's
up.
It's not. Yeah. So it's funny how those mentors and people will shape who we become. So talk a little bit now, your basketball playing days in college eventually come to an end. How do you make the decision to land where you are now as a I wouldn't even like a coach, but I think when I say coach, a lot of people think of like on the sidelines,
yes.
Coaching a team, coaching a program, a mentor trainer for me would be more of how I would kind of label or describe you. How does that transition happen? How do you end up in this? I mean, I'm a good bit older than you, but like there weren't trainers or these skill development people around, and if you didn't get it from your coach or someone at the program that you played, you probably weren't going to get it unless it was developed out at the playground. Like, I mean, that's the only place
Yeah,
development happened, whether it was
sure.
skills or bad habits. No one really had a say over. So, how did you? And as far as I can remember, locally, I forget how we got introduced, but you were like the first guy to really do this skill development and training. How did talk us through how that happens?
Okay. There's another name. There's another name, and I gotta forgive myself for. There's two other names, and this all tie into the different mantras that I'm constantly chanting. There's New York James, who was at Christmas Addicts, who kind of just threw me in the water. He threw me in the water as well and made me compete against older kids. I also played in church leagues when I was in ninth grade, and I'll get to that. Your point. Um, Charlie Fortney, Charlie Fortney up in Harrisburg, Vance Hoops.
Yeah,
Charlie Fortney and my dad run into each other somewhere. I don't know where they run into each other. And Charlie Fortney says, I'm trying to work with some kids. I got a couple guys. I got this one kid, good friend of mine now, who's going to be a Division I player, he thinks. And, I'm just trying to work with some kids. Charlie Fortney. So my dad says, hey, I got a son. Maybe you guys can link up. He throws me in the car with Charlie. Charlie drives to New Bern, North Carolina, and we go to a guy named Gerald Jarman's camp. Gerald Jarman is up in Harrisburg as well now and trains as well. Gerald Jarman is holding a basketball camp, and now I'm exposed to a whole different world. Now I'm coaching in the morning and doing his older camp in the afternoon, and I'm being exposed to kids who are going to the University of North Carolina and all this different stuff. And so Charlie begins to train a little bit. I work with Charlie, but I hate to put Charlie out there. Charlie didn't see it. Charlie couldn't see my potential. Charlie saw this other kid who had a bigger name and more defined future because of his family, because of his stature, because of the school he went to, different things like that. He couldn't see it in me. But he did teach me a couple things about shooting. Cool. So I have that reference point in training. Then I go on, graduate college, everything's done. I'm working as a general manager of sales for Fastenal, making great money, delegating everything I can, riding around and having lunch more than I'm working at this point. And I got nothing out of it. It did nothing for my spirit. It did nothing for my soul. It did nothing to motivate me. The money wasn't moving me. I was making great money, and it just wasn't moving me. Also note, I started off my college as an LED special ed teacher. And if you go back to my freshman year, sorry to jump around. If you go back to my freshman year media guide, it says postgraduate ambitions, and mine was to teach and coach. So I had the vision of what I want to do, mainly because the most positive men that I had met, the most positive black men that I had met in my life were coaches. They were the people who gave me a chance, from New York James to Coach Preston to Coach Alexander. They were coaches. And that gave me a vision. That's what I wanted to be. So I would get done with my job as a general manager at Fastenal, and I would go to this gym in Baltimore where I was a 7th and 8th grade coach of an Orthodox Jewish team. So there's yarmulkes and clips flying everywhere around the gym. But boy, did I get these guys playing. Did I have these guys hooping. So we'd walk in the gym, everybody would underestimate us, and before they got a chance to realize what was going on, we were up 20. And then we were downhill. And then it was all downhill for them. We were 30, 40, game's over. And this is moving through Baltimore at this point in time. And it would be hilarious. So when I would walk in that gym, like literally, it was like the come to moment, like all the lights would come on when I walk in that gym. And I was like, this is it. I have to figure out how to do this right here. This I got to figure out how I can create a living off of this feeling that I have right here, because making all that money doing sales does nothing for me at all. So I decide to move to York. I move back to York. They're opening up New Hope, and I take an athletic director slash basketball coach position. I immediately inherited kids. We only had ninth and 10th grade. So I had a summer league. Then I do my first summer league then over at Kings Park. I host a summer league. I get the kids, recruit the kids to the school. The kids then start to attend the school, and they're all ninth graders. They're not good basketball players. But like Vince Alexander did to me, I wrapped my arms around those kids, and we began to work. We put our heads down. We began to work. And with freshmen, we were extreme. We were pretty successful playing varsity basketball. As sophomores, we made it to being ranked number 5 in the state with all sophomores on that team. Long story short, it abruptly ends at that point in time. That journey for me ended at New Hope. A good part of my immaturity, if I ever had to say it. I wasn't. I don't think I was mature enough to handle all the responsibilities that I had. I was doing a fantastic job on the job, but I just don't think I was mature enough to handle everything. So that abruptly ended right then. I kind of got a little down, a little depressed, and I sat in the house. I couldn't believe it ended, and I didn't know what to do. But what I knew is that I really didn't want to go work for anybody anymore now at this point, because I was heartbroken. So I'm like, okay, I have this skill set of training, developing, coaching, and I also have this sales background of doing this stuff. I've always wanted to be an entrepreneur. I'm not going back to work for somebody. And I started to work with a young man by the name of Elijah Cooper. Elijah Cooper was a Northeastern 1,000-point scorer who attended Lock Haven. We would get up at 5 a.m. in the morning, and he started finding success. And his dad, who was running an AAU program, kept saying, Sam, like, I've never seen anything like what you do. What you do is completely different than I've ever seen. Like, you're great at what you do. Like, this is like, my son is really benefiting from this. And so with those confirmations, his success, the dad's feedback, I started on my way. I started on my way. I think and now Elijah Cooper is the JV coach and 4-time district championship over at Columbia High School there, and AAU coach, and we're pretty close now still as well. So, been doing this for a good amount of time now. You're talking about, I was developing a website and was going through my alumni list. I was just trying to get all my alumni down, and I realized I'm over 100 kids that have now gone off and attended college and played athletically. I didn't realize that. Like, it completely blew my mind. You know, my head's been down and I've been grinding. And when you look back, it's like a lot of stories. You have multiple coaches who are now college coaches now that have come, that started off with me. And I just think it's pretty awesome now to look back and reflect on everything.
It's pretty good. So tell us about what does development look like for you now? I mean, I know you have, from as little as they can pick up a ball all the way up to kids that, I mean, heck, I have a 4-year-old that trains with you and a 20-year-old that trains with you. Talk a little bit about what your programs and camps look like from youth all the way up to some of the more senior elder players that you're working with.
Fundamentals from top to bottom. It's a little bit more fun in the fundamentals for your 4-year-old. It's a lot more mental for your 20-year-old, but fundamentals is where we start and finish on everything. And I really believe, and I'll also give a little credit to Kyrie Irving is a person who I really look up to, and listen to him talk, and Kobe Bryant, listen to those guys talk. Um, Extreme focuses on being as sharp and the best you can at fundamentals is the way to be great at basketball. I was a minimalist in the game of basketball, besides my dunking, which was really showy. But everything else was one dribble, two dribble, three dribble, one dribble pull up, one dribble get to the basketball. Not a lot of overdoing on anything. And so that's kind of what I kind of bring to the table for my young kids, and my old kids. And it's kind of cool to watch things. Sometimes you might come in my gym. I mean, even yourself, who's participated in some adult classes, um, I there's fundamental stuff that happens there that also happened at the in your fourth graders class. And so I think if there's finer detailed points that you can focus on in order to make kids better, depending on what level they're at. But ultimately, it's fundamentals. It's fundamental development. I want to make you as complete a basketball player as I can make you, very similar to what I was as a basketball player, and make you and really intensify your fundamentals. And then from there, we can kind of slide left, step back right, and do a couple other things from that.
But building a good base, like if you're going to teach them or have them, because I think I would guess a lot of times what happens is kids or players come to the gym and they like, hey, I want you to teach me these 6 moves, or when are we going to work on, this Euro step, and without having that right base, none of that stuff will
None of it.
ever be possible. Yeah, it's pretty awesome
None
to
of it.
watch that happen. It's funny the thing you say about the mental side of it, right? Fundamentals and the mentals. Some of the I think some of the most impactful situations where I've seen you mentor my son have been just that on the mental aspect of it, which from my perspective, I see a lot of, it's particularly on Instagram or social media. I mean, there's thousands now of these trainers out there. They're always talking about like the physical move and things of that sort. One thing that I think early on, from my son's perspective, was a source of frustration for him, which has now led to one of the things I think he appreciates the most is the detail in which you like he would say to me, he goes, yeah, he said, I talked to Coach Sam and we were going to work on these 3 things today. We never got off number 1. And I'm like, oh yeah, well tell me more about that. And he's like, well, I don't remember the details. Be like, I didn't have my footwork was off by a half an inch. And he insisted that it be right before we move on to the next thing. And when he was, I don't know, 10, 11, 12, I could just see him like throwing his hands up like this and pouting. And now today, I think what happens is, I mean, if you look at him, one of the things he'll do is he'll lock in on a particular detail, and he won't move off of it, even when he's doing training himself. He won't
Yeah.
move in his workouts until he does something, even though he's done it 1,000 times. If he can't do it perfectly, he won't move on. Where'd that come from? Like, where's this? Like, I wouldn't call it perfection, because I mean, I talk about this all the time. Is like there is no perfection. There's only the pursuit of it.
Mm-hmm.
Is
Mm-hmm.
actually so the only thing perfect is the pursuit of perfection,
Absolutely.
because perfect should always move. If you got it down 100%, well, let's move the bar a little bit there.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Where did that come from? Like, what's your I'll call it infatuation with detail.
Um, I think honestly, dancing. We grew up doing talent shows, and the details of dancing and things of that nature. I think that's where it originated at. And we talk about footwork and things of that nature, and cadences, and 1, 2, 3. A lot of that stuff comes from a dance background, and honest, and I do think that from there, I was just you're exposed to those routines that can help you really like just lock in. Like you said, have so many parents talk about me and make jokes about his toe wasn't that way or his toe wasn't that way, and I focus on stuff like that, and it matters. Like
I
it
think
really
that's the key, right? That would have been my
matters.
follow up question is other than, everybody has their own style or their emphasis or their beliefs. For someone that's listening to this and they're thinking about, their next phase or season as a basketball player, whether that's to go on to make the middle school team or junior varsity or varsity or college, what's the value in a player that's able to execute on the details? Yeah, what's so what?
It slows the game down, and ultimately that's what you want. Ultimately, one, repetition breeds confidence. Number one, repetition is going to breed confidence, and the more confidence you have in what you're doing, the slower the game is going to move for you. And ultimately, when you talk about pros and you see like Embiid Euro step, and it's just dead slow, like amongst the best athletes in the world, there's just a vision and understanding from the repetition that happens. So being extremely detailed and completing your missions, completing A before you get to B. And because honestly, my stuff moves in steps. When I train, I definitely train in steps to get to the next level. We keep, like you said, continue to move the bar up. And so focusing on those details, being repetitive and perfecting those details to a point where you can't miss or you can't do it incorrectly does nothing but breed a high level of confidence that slows the game down. And then then you're usually successful because of that.
Thing that came to mind is like, how a lot of these kids talk about like having a bag, like this guy's got no bag and stuff like that. Well, as you were saying that, I was thinking, there's players out there that might need a bag of 15 moves because they ran through the first two moves or three moves ineffectively, right? So they have to go like 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 10 moves deep before they actually get to
Yes,
something that works, or they just get fatigued and they end up shooting.
you're right.
But yeah, I mean, and then going back to how you said you were a minimalist, right? Where you try and do maybe a core group of things at an excellent level. And then again, I think what you had said is like then to be able to move up levels after that and expand on that um, is a logical next step. But I think when there's a lot of people out there that whether it's business or basketball, coaching, skills, they do 100 things at a mediocre level and they do nothing at an excellent level,
You're right.
which is tough. It's tough to be able to carve out your niche. It's tough to be able to put a flag in the ground and understand what you stand for when you're trying to do 1,000 different things at the same time. So, talk. What are those levels? What is that phase or whatever that you take a player through? Let's say someone comes to you. I don't know, like a 10th grader, and they're a decent basketball, maybe a Sam Sutton. Sam Sutton's an athletic kid that works really hard and maybe his skill set's not developed yet, but he's got this shape and this body and this mind and this attitude that looks like he could go play whatever the next level is for that kid. Where do you start?
I start by evaluating the child and taking what's positive about them and enhancing that immediately. That's my first focus. For example, like your son, he was a football player. He was a little wider. You brought him to me, tell me that he was going to be a power forward, and I'm like, how tall is mom? Is mom 5'11"?
Yeah,
No, you're not very tall. So
yeah,
we have to figure out how to do. So I'm going to take who you are, and I'm going to enhance that first. We're going to we're going to figure out what your weaknesses are, and we're going to work that while we're enhancing exactly who you are. Very similar, like who I was, in saying that I figured out how to rebound first. I was good at that, so let's become the best at that. That paid the bills all the way through college. And that was, and so that's I would start there, and then we would get on that fundamental development chart of A, B, C, D, and as you progress is how it goes. There's a lot of kids, unfortunately, who will go A, B, C. They'll get frustrated because, they were on Instagram and they seen a kid doing, S and T and Q, and they want to do that. And they can't see the vision that in order to do that effectively, you must really lock down ABC. And then you have some kids who get to D or get to E and think that they have everything that they need. And then they leave. And then when they come back, we're right back at A, B, C, and you have to continue to start all over. So there's just steps within the fundamentals that you just continue to grow on, to keep and sharpen on. For example, a lot of my kids don't shoot 3-pointers for a very long time. If you train with me privately, we're in front of that basket at the free throw line, at the elbows, trying to make kids the best shooters that they can be. If I can make you a great shooter, you can make 3-point shots. Now, once you become a great shooter and get your fundamentals down and your balance down, your foundation down, your follow through down, your flow down, once all those things are together, now we can start practicing shooting 3-pointers. But
is there a fundamental difference between shooting a 16-foot shot and a 25-foot shot?
Very, 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 very big difference. And too many kids that I work with need so much fixing because they want to shoot 3-pointers at earlier ages, and it throws their shots off completely. So then that's even more time that we got to spend in front of this basket now in order to get your fundamental development. Because yes, there's extreme differences between shooting a 3-pointer and shooting a free throw, and depending on what age. And also something that's important. This year we're starting age 4, 5, and 6 and 7 summer league, and we're focusing on smaller hoops and smaller balls. Over in FIBA, over in France, if you catch some Wimbiana tapes, he's dunking at 6th and 7th grade. And we thought it was because the rims, he was that tall. No, they're playing on smaller rims up until they're 12 years old, for their fundamental development. So kids who use bigger balls when they're young, I encourage as many parents as they can to get out and get 27.5 balls for their young children. Because you talk about a youth size ball is the same size that a WNBA player is playing with. It's the same size that Caitlin Clark is playing with.
Yeah.
And I don't understand why we don't talk about that a lot more when we're dealing with our youth. That makes no sense. Most youth, and I've been guilty of it myself. Most kids that come in there, I roll them a 28.5. I recently invested in a lot of 27.5s because of your 4-year-old who's in the gym. Like that does her no good to be playing with the same ball that Caitlin Clark is playing with. That makes no sense.
Yeah. So as we wrap up here, it's interesting. One thing you said earlier is that you want to become the person that you needed.
Yes.
Close us out with that. What does that mean? What did you need? What did Sam need? Let's start there. What did you need?
What did I need? I needed people who cared. I needed people who were willing to invest in me. People who were positive. People who were great role models. Not that they needed to be perfect, because none of us are perfect and we all fall short of glory of God. None of us. And you needed people with experiences, real life experiences that can pour into your life and help you avoid some of the potholes that life has sitting for every young man. You needed people who had information. When I think about Vince,
the blueprint,
or we can call it the blueprint of the playbook. When I initially started this, that's what it was. It was called Blueprint Basketball Camp.
Yeah, it was like, when you said that, I took like 2 pages of notes here, but I think what a lot of people might have believed back then and even now is that like college basketball players were born, where they're made, right? Like when I think about my son and his journey with you, he was developed over time into the player that he is. That had, I remember conversations, that you would have with him, or coaching sessions that you would have with him about specifically, this is what, it wasn't like this will win the game. Sure, that was part of it, but it was like, this is what a collegiate coach will look for. They will see value in your ability to be able to change the game from this perspective.
Mm-hmm.
And over time, there's a saying that I think about all the time is that what we focus on expands.
Mm-hmm.
And so he as I think about him, he turned into a shooter pretty late,
Mm-hmm.
right? Like he was a kid that could shoot, but he became a shooter
Mm-hmm.
late. I think he earned his way onto many of the teams that he was on before a lot of the kids his age because of his physical presence, because of his leadership ability, because of his basketball IQ, because of his defense. Much
Mm-hmm.
like for you, your calling card your sophomore year was rebounding.
Mm-hmm.
I think that was something that he was counted on as a, I don't know, 5'11"
Absolutely.
kid. So it's super interesting. When you talked about that, what I heard was I think a lot of people go, "Hey, this kid's going to be a basketball player. I know it at the age of 12 years old. He's just going to make it. He's kind of born that way." And now what I see you as is that you're able to take players from like their sort of intended outcome and
Mm-hmm.
move them up 1 to 2 levels, whatever that means. Whether it's they land at the same division or conference or level of play, but they're contributing at a higher level. But the development that we talked about very early on, just as the conversation becomes full circle, is what I've seen. I remember you told me he may have been a freshman. I'm not even sure he was in high school yet. And I don't remember the exact term, but it was like you coined this phrase. It was like a strong guard,
Mm-hmm.
not a combo guard, not a 1, not a 2. And you explained it to me. He was like, he's strong, he's physical, he's gritty. He'll do the dirty work.
You can
And then I'm
shoot.
going to teach him this other stuff. So when you said I take the positives and we focus on that while we start to build additional skills, that's the advice that I would have for anybody that listens to this. And I think that's what makes Sam an exceptional leader and mentor is that a lot of people in our life will try and force us into a place or force us into a spot that someone else has intended for us. It's what they want out of us, or it's what they think society wants from us, or what social media believes of us. And I think what's really powerful about what you said is that much like your experience when you were at a sales job and it didn't fit,
Mm-hmm.
that there's an intended purpose for each of us
Each
in
of us.
every circle that we're in, whether it's a job or a community or our family. And the quicker you can find out what that is, right, and live in that area, which we'll just call the fundamentals,
Mm-hmm.
right,
Mm-hmm.
the happier we're going to be, the more effective we're going to be. There's a
Absolutely.
friend of mine, and I'll butcher this saying a little bit, but he says, um, if a fish spent its whole life trying to climb a tree, he'd feel like an idiot,
How about it?
right?
How
So
about it?
if you feel out of place or you feel like you're doing something you're not intended to do and it's becoming hard and becoming difficult and you feel like an idiot, you may benefit from finding a mentor or a leader that can say, hey, man, why are you trying to do this?
Yeah.
Let's get to the core of what your value is. That's what we're going to stake our claim on and put our flag in the ground. And then we'll slowly start to build around
Yeah. Stay in your lane.
that. There's a
Stay.
thousand ways to say it. Yeah.
Yeah. Stay.
Yeah.
Stay right in your lane. Stay in your lane. I mean, and really just enhance that. Make that the best experience you can. But yeah, I encourage anyone to find something you love and do that. Like find something you love, and you'll never work a day in your life. I don't work. I don't. I don't. I mean, I get up with your son and many other kids at 5 and 6 o'clock in the morning quite often. Um, that's not work for me. I walk out of the gym at 9:30. Parents asked me the other day, when do you sleep? I said, I'll do it when I'm dead. But working at 9:30, walking out of the gym at 9:30 and being back in there, opening the doors at 6 a.m. to pour into a young man or a young woman's life to know that they're going to be more productive in life and doing something they love, that's priceless. And I would encourage anyone and everyone to find something you love. It might not pay like you think you want to be paid, but the monetary value that comes in and happiness and is unmatched.
Yeah,
Is
it's interesting you say that. I just read this book called 10X is Easier Than 2X. And really, what he talks about is going through this process of finding your unique ability. And what he says is a lot of times we end up doing this 2X like working a sales job,
mm-hmm,
right? Because we're kind of good at it.
Mhm.
and there's a paycheck, whether it's emotional or financial, that comes with it. He says when you have the trust and faith to lean into what your unique ability is, what gives you fulfillment, and what you do differently and better than anybody else, eventually the pay will come. And he said it may be more of a emotional paycheck, right, than a financial paycheck.
Absolutely.
But for the people that do that, the money doesn't matter. Plus, there's a Wall Street Journal statistic out there that says once you go over $60,000, there's no difference in happiness. So whether you
Yeah.
make $60,000 or you make
Yes.
$6 million, there's no certainty of an increase in happiness between those two people, because
I
they'll say it like that number. You can go out to dinner, you can have a reliable car, you're not going to worry about certain things as long as you responsibly manage your stuff. So I think that's great advice. And Sam, as we wrap up, if someone wants to follow you, what's the best place? A, tell us a little bit about your camps, and then B, if they want to learn more about where can they find you?
Like you said, we most of my camps are out of Central Pennsylvania, working in here, York, Pennsylvania. Do travel. Best way to find all my information in one shot will be welcometohardwork.com, where you can book sessions, send kids to camp. We have summer camps. We'll have summer leagues. We do private training, group training, um, consultation, where I can help get a vision on your child and figure out what the positives are for your child and where we need to work at, and uh, maybe even kind of forecast, through my experiences of training NBA players and going through Israel, and working camps there. I have a unique ability in playing Division 1 to forecast about where players should be so that parents aren't getting bad information, because I think that's a big thing nowadays. A lot of parents get a lot of bad information and they don't know really where they're saying and how to go forward. So consultations, and yeah, so
Film.
hard work,
Yeah,
film,
I've seen
film,
a ton of some of the
film,
best, I think,
film,
pivotal moments that I've seen for my son has been film review.
film review.
Yeah.
It's
Um,
priceless. You've gotten to see it. Like no, like you've gotten to really see it. The funniest thing I always tell about, even when Cam's college coach called me, one of the first things I told him was, I said, we were doing film session the other day, and the type of coach that I am, Cam thought we were going to be talking about basketball. We were talking about his behavior on the bench, literally, like, and how to get him to relax while he was on the bench rather than burning so much fuel waiting to get in the game. And I thought that was hilarious. So yes, I tell parents now that film session is the equivalent to 3 private sessions. I think one film session is the equivalent to 3 private
Film
sessions.
don't lie.
Film, men lie, women lies. That pause and rewind button never lie. That pause and rewind button never lie. If I
Yeah.
can pause and rewind, you in trouble.
Yeah.
So
All right,
no,
man.
yeah, that's awesome. So I another thing that I like to say that's sticking in my head, and I don't know where else was to fit this in that, but quite often the kids and families that are attracted to me are kids on the outside of the circles, outside of the inner circles. I don't attract the good kids right now. Some good kids, some driven kids want more for themselves. They'll come in, but most case scenarios, quite like very similar to your son. He trained a couple of times, but we dove in after he got cut.
Yeah.
Got cut in 7th grade when we dove in. Those kids who are on the outside of the circle understand that they need more, and when you have that understanding and you're willing to go through some fire to get to it, those kids are usually be the most successful, and they leapfrog the good kids
Yeah.
quite often, as we watch in your son's story, which is one of our more remarkable stories that I tell all the time. Kid who gets cut in 7th grade comes back the best player as the 8th grader, the best player on the 9th grade team, comes back as a 9th grader, the second best player, if not the best player on the varsity team.
Yeah.
And that story is told by me many times. So I'd also encourage parents to watch the way that we plateau kids and the praises that we give young kids. They have to stay hungry. They have to constantly be looking for better information. Competing against the locals, your locals might not get you where you want to be, to where your big goals are. because if the local bar is here and the standard for recruiting is here, and you're just beating up on Johnny, you're missing the whole boat. So like you said, finding a mentor, a leader, someone who can maybe forecast and have vision on an experience in that area, real experience. Because we run into the issue nowadays with basketball where everybody's a coach and everybody does everything. Make sure you're getting good quality information, and it might be something you don't want to hear, especially in my gym.
Yeah, there's no shortage of honesty, but I mean that's I think that's an important aspect to close out on is that I had a guy named and I want to introduce you. His name's Colin Stevens. He was on the podcast 2 shows ago, and played at Coastal Carolina. Runs a camp now down in Myrtle Beach. He just had who's the kid? Oh man, he's all over social media. He played with Overtime Elite. Eli.
That kid, I know you're talking about.
He was just training him and his brother.
Gabe is the brother. Gabe is the brother. I can't think of their last names.
Yeah, and they played for actually Cam played them at that Blue Ridge. But he said like the advice he gave in the middle of that interview is surround yourself with truth tellers. That was like and you ask him for like, hey, what's the best advice you could give one? So when you talk about like, hey, if you're going to get an honest assessment, surround yourself with truth tellers. And he said, be a truth teller and surround yourself with truth tellers. Own your stuff, right? Yes. And then earn the right to call other people out on their stuff. And that was like his 4 pieces to like building a team, which I thought was super interesting, right? You talk about the basics, like tell the truth. Somehow along the way, that's gotten lost in translation where oftentimes people that tell the truth are frowned upon or, considered to be overly direct or rude. And it's just like the film.
I came across a quote a while ago, maybe about a year and a half ago, that said, with truth, make sure you use some kindness.
Yeah.
Because the truth is sharp. It hurts most people. Most people don't want to deal with the truth. It's sharp and it hurts people. So try to use some kindness. But you need the truth. Like, I get frustrated watching parents who are willing to invest in their children who are willing to invest in themselves and don't have the correct path. They're listening to people who can't give them the honesty of where they're at to understand where they need to go. Like, if you don't know that you're not very good, then how do you know what you need to do to get good? Right. If you think that I've already arrived and you plateau yourself because I've already arrived, of course that kid's not going to think he needs to come in the gym and do all of that the bad kid is doing. Yeah. When the reality is, if you're going to be good, you need to outwork the bad kid. Yeah. Because they can catch up. So,
man, it was awesome catching up with you. Thank you so much for spending time here with the day. On Facebook, also on Instagram, Sam Sutton Skills Academy, online at welcometohardwork.com. Sam, I'll see you, my man. Thank you so much.
Thank you, brother.
Right,
see you.